did you already start recording? Okay, excellent. I was gonna say, before we even begin, this is what I did with some of my classes today, was just like, everybody with me, breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth, right? So everybody on 3, 1, 2, 3. And it just feels a little bit better after you do that, right?
Yes, it does.
Good old yoga move.
Yeah,
Breathe
some
out
yogic
twice as long
breathing.
as you breathe in.
Right, yeah. Breathe in for 6, breathe out for 9, right? Or something like that. Attendance sheet is, I think it's made its way around.
I think it's around.
So
I don't know why we have to fill this out each time.
I think it's just to keep track of who's been here.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
we've adjusted some people,
Are
right?
are you keeping track of it?
I don't know
Who
I
keeps
forget
it?
who we report
Yeah.
to. I have all of them right now.
Yeah.
I collect them at the
Yeah.
end.
Okay.
So
At the end of the.
Janelle, I think we're all gonna get participation trophies.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll make shirts,
Get a sticker.
adapt shirts.
party
Where's the
gifts.
merch, right?
You should have been here last week. We all got a pizza.
Yeah, we
did.
Yeah.
The front door.
Right.
It was an accidental delivery.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Well,
God
but.
will
Yeah, God will
We
provide.
did the right
Manna from
thing.
heaven.
Did provide.
First called the people and they said, we've already called Papa John's and they brought us new ones. And then Phil had the foresight to do the right thing. He called Papa John's and said, we have these pizzas, and they said, oh, keep them. Which we thought
We
they'd
can't
say,
do it.
but he did the
Yeah.
right thing.
Yeah.
So,
All
it was
right.
all according to Foyle.
Yes. So, are you?
No.
Okay. All right. Were you doing the bunny here? Okay. We're here, and we're happy to be here. We had a little technical difficulties, but that's all right. I would ask for prayer requests, but think about them, and then we can share them at the end, and I'll add them in at the closing prayer. Okay. So if we could all bow our heads and prepare ourselves for grace. Dear Lord, thank you for this day to come together to talk about leadership development, simplified structure, and accountability for this 6th session of ADAPT. Please quiet our minds and focus them for the next 120 minutes as we plan and encourage each other and have thoughtful and insightful discussion over the direction of the church. Please be with us and fill us with your Holy Spirit, Lord, as we continue this journey, and please be with us as we, in our words and our actions, this day and every day. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
So, this is session 6, and let's go right into the scripture focus. Yeah,
Devotions.
yes. Is the we're supposed to? Okay, yeah. I think that's the scripture focus, is the devotion. So,
Oh,
yes.
okay, 'cause I have one.
After you.
Okay, so I found one on leadership. It's called Leaders Do It First. And the scripture, let me read that real quick, that goes with it. It's John 13:12-17. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. And then the scripture, another scripture they list here is, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ, 1 Corinthians 11:1. It says, it's much easier to challenge others to do evangelism than to personally be involved in it. This is especially true if we would find ourselves in a leadership position. One key biblical principle is that leaders must first do what they call others to do. A leader does not hang back waiting to see what others are doing and then follow them. A leader is out front demonstrating how to live and act. A godly leader does not conform to the status quo, but sets the standard for others to follow. A leader who follows Christ leads by example. One way to demonstrate this is by placing a string on a table. When you pull the string, it will follow you, but if you push it, it bunches up and doesn't move forward well. When it comes to leading people, things go much the same way. They need a person to follow who is out front and leading by example. Jesus, the greatest leader of all, took a towel and washed his disciples' feet. When he finished, he said, I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. That's leadership. When it comes to witnessing, leaders must do it first. They are to lead the way in following Christ and in sharing Christ with others.
Thank you. Yeah. And isn't that true, right? It's all of it. It's tough. It's easier to say we should go and evangelize. You should go evangelize specifically. And then, yeah. Thank you for the devotion. Are there any thoughts before we move on? Reactions?
Reaction.
Yeah.
We discussed this evangelism a few sessions ago, and in the Bible context, evangelism is a great word, great concept, and yet I think all of my observations of modern day evangelism really just leaves a poor taste in my mouth. I've seen it done wrong repeatedly, and even if it were to be done right, I think so many people are conditioned to automatically want to change the channel. Oh, this is evangel, I'm changing the channel. And so in the modern context, to try to evangelize, I think we're faced with a brick wall. Just my reaction.
Right. What do you think that brick wall, would that be the current state of evangelism or the pushback against?
The pushback against evangelism.
Okay.
Well, I think like Carrie Kiphart mentioned Sunday, in today's world, you're afraid to say you're a Christian to someone you don't know
Put yourself out there for anything.
well,
Right.
because their interpretation of what a Christian is may not be at all what you are, and so we've got this kind of a negative out there that has been created,
Right.
Yeah.
that it's hard to, but I think where we need to make the shift is not, and we talked about this more on Sunday, is being the leader and setting the example of being a good Christian for other people.
we do
It's
matters.
what we do, how we treat other people, how we interact with each other, how we build that relationship first, which is what all this has been talking about. You build the relationship, and then you get to the place where you can say, I have struggles in my life too, and I can face them because of my faith. Or, I see you're having a bad time with this. Can I pray with you about that? That helps me. So you build the relationship first, and then you can put yourself out there. I think we do have to do evangelism differently than the way it's been done. And that's part of
And
this,
probably calling it evangelism
is a
might be
bad
part of the
thing.
problem, because
Exactly.
You think about all the TV evangelists that we've seen.
Yeah, and it
Just
makes you
that
go,
broadcast to hundreds
Yeah.
of millions
Yeah.
of people, and then, investigations turn up that things
Yeah.
were not quite like you
Yes.
thought they
Yeah.
were.
yeah, so.
Separating this idea of televangelism and evangelism
And true-
true Christian evangelism, right?
Well,
You
and
have
true
to-
witnessing rather than
Right.
evangelizing, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely the
the wording
wording is,
even saying at
Problematic.
least
It's
kind of a
problematic.
bad taste
Yep.
in your mouth, right?
yeah.
because it is this idea of we're putting this lifestyle, this idea, this religion against or like trying to push it off on people, I guess,
Yeah.
is that feeling that I get from
Yeah.
televangelists.
Yeah.
Call for,
Yeah.
pay $8.99 and you'll be saved, right? Yeah, right. It's
Even when I have people
Tough.
come to my door, they come and they got their stuff in their hand and they're armed, and I'm like, no, I go to a church.
Thank
I
you.
usually don't let them in.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I know that a lot of people do, and they want to talk about,
Yeah.
tell me about your faith, and I'll listen about mine. But
Mhm.
I'm not really very keen on that.
Open to that.
Are you?
No.
Especially now.
When I live out in the country, typically I open the door, I'm home by myself, I put down the screen, and I'm like,
Well,
I'm sorry, but thank you.
well, and
you
I'm a
know,
single person. too.
Right,
Now,
so,
you think that, well, they're all right, but
yes.
And there's
They may
usually
not be,
two of
They
them.
may not be.
Mhm.
But-
Yeah. And I think this is a good segue to transition into leadership, right? What leadership is there in televangelism, right? Like what is actually, who is the leader there? Sure, they are the speaker, but, right, are they actually leading a church? Are they actually leading a congregation, right? And that's, I think, an important thing to look at is how much are they actually impacting the people, right? And that's the goal here, is to
Well,
impact people.
The other part of evangelism that I have trouble with is too often it comes across as there's something wrong with you that I need to fix.
Mhm.
that's right. I got it all together, and
yeah.
I'm here to help you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to save you.
and
This is going to be my last thing before we move on,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's really important because I just got done watching this documentary, and it really touched me with how damaging sometimes the church can be, especially with non-represented people, right? I just got done.
Marginalized.
I just got done watching a documentary on Netflix called "Pray Away," and it's about the gay conversion therapy of the Exodus. If you've heard of Exodus, it's an organization that was like the biggest gay conversion therapy religious group in the nation. I think between like 80 to like the mid 70s to like the early 2000s was like the height of its power. And they interview a wide variety of people that were a part of it and then left it and then splintered off of it, and then it covers a lot. And it does not disparage Christianity in any way. It disparages this group that was very harmful to and very manipulative to a group of people. And
Well, they were physically abusive too.
yeah, like all sorts of awful things that happened to within this organization and under the guise of Christian love, right? And it really, I guess, shifted my perception of just how damaging an organization can be if the leadership is misinformed or does not have the proper, I don't know. It was just a lot. It was really like there was almost so much information that I have to rewatch it again. But especially now in today's world, right? And they interview, gay and lesbian Christians that continue to practice, that are, still very religiously connected, right? And just how, what you said, a struggle, right? This idea of struggle was something that really impacted me because that's what the entire, spoiler alert, that's what the entire documentary showed, was all of these these people struggling and suffering in the real world because of other people that were trying to help them, but it wasn't working. It wasn't helping. It wasn't assisting. So if you have a spare hour and 40 minutes, like it was truly eye-opening, and it was only mainly this particular organization that kind of took charge of it and was like the biggest one, and just lying and manipulation and all this awful subversive stuff. But it really, I mean, thinking about the leadership, right? Like, it was the leadership that was very manipulative and very cunning and very damaging to
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
to humans, right?
Yeah.
That we should love,
Yeah.
and accept and embrace, right?
Yeah.
And that maybe there was a part in here talking about millennials, and maybe that's the millennial in me speaking, right? But really, it was something that I recently watched and thought was something to consider, right? I watched it because I wanted to hear the story, right? It's good to broaden your horizons and go
Yeah.
outside of your maybe comfort zone or what you know or what you think you know, right? And it was eye-opening, truly. So I'd recommend it to anyone. But let's do a quick accountability check-in. So let's go through the ground rules as we always do. Rule 1, speak from the center of your own experience. 2, stay focused on the topic at hand. 3, talk about ideas and not people. 4, everyone has the same opportunity to speak as well as to not speak. Reflection is a good thing. And finally, bunny ears to get us back on track. So, did everybody read chapters 7 and 9?
We're all good.
Excellent. And action steps from last session. We all have been noticing ways in which God is calling us towards one direction or another. Hopefully, that's the goal. So let's go right into learning. In this session, we will focus on leadership development, simplifying structure, and accountability. It is important to have an intentional process to identify and equip both today's leaders as well as the next generation of leaders. Simplify how decisions are made in order to expedite the opportunity for effective, fruitful ministry. Accountability is key and can be done in church. Be permission giving with healthy boundaries. If leaders aren't looking out for the mission, who is? So I'll open it up to the group. What were some key parts that you highlighted or initial reactions to the reading? And this is specifically chapter 7. So the one that was focused in on leadership. I think it starts on page 77. Chapter 7 on 77. Our lucky day.
I did notice on page 78, it says, one of the outcries we hear in consultations is that church doesn't have enough volunteers. And I think we've heard that in our church, that we don't have enough volunteers.
But what they were saying is the part of the reason we don't is because we haven't done a good job of
Training.
bringing people up into leadership. We somewhere in here it talked about how they run their nominations, and I thought, yep, that's
That's
what
us.
we do.
Yeah.
We pull out the list, we have slots,
And
we
the only
stick
thing
names.
The only thing that saved me this
And you
time
have
around is
the pictorial to go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Something that's struck me on 79 is people are oftentimes placed on committees based on tradition. Common personalities, popularity, and availability rather than by matching people's gifts and skills with the needed gifts and skills of the positions.
I highlighted that as well.
mhm.
I thought it was interesting, though, on page 83, it says leadership development is not step 1 in the process. So
Yeah.
I think they're kind of, it's
I-
important, but it's not, there's more important things that have to happen.
Yeah.
I highlighted
Right.
that same thing, because I thought,
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting to the point that this is almost becoming overwhelming, you know, all the things, and trying to get everything to fit together, and, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, where do we
Where
start?
do
And there are a
we
lot
start?
of things they pointed out that we're like, well, we can see ourselves there, and maybe this might be a better way to do it, but, you know, it's like, I don't know, I guess it's like eating an elephant, it's one step at a time, but it seems to
You
me,
have to remember, it's a
one
process.
bite at a
It's not
time.
gonna
It-
happen
yeah.
quickly, so.
It just seems to me that
Right.
this whole process is probably a 5 to 10 year process, just trying to get some traction with it. You know, to start working on developing your leaders and doing the things. And then I look
Yeah.
around the room and think, who's gonna still be here and wanting to serve in leadership positions, and, you know, of the people,
10 years from
this
now.
group and the next, and the other group, you know, who are those people? Or, this is not something that's quoted here. Everything that I keep reading, chapter after chapter after chapter, when they get to the prescription stage, it's like the pastor and, and I'm thinking, the pastors, all of them, everybody that we've ever had, everybody that's sitting out at Wesley Manor, none of those people have been trained in any of this. They've been brought up in the
In
traditional
the old way.
Right.
Traditional way too.
Yeah.
They're in the same boat as us, and I'm thinking, boy, that's a lot to put, and then they're accountable on top of it. He or she, whoever's the pastor of this congregation, is the most accountable person of everything. They're the one in charge. They're the one that does the hiring and firing. They do this, I mean, you've got to have a lot of management skills and a lot of training to be able to do the things that they're loading off on one person. And then we, expected them to have 52 super duper things, and then how many blowouts during the course of the year of really exposition type things, you know? I mean, I'm thinking,
It's
holy
overwhelming.
moly. It is.
Yeah.
It would be I mean, I'm feeling sorry for the minister. I think that, I mean, it's putting a lot more accountability on the minister
Mhm.
to really be in charge, instead of coming in and being dictated to by various committees all over the place and all that, or these, you know, opinions and all that. You know, you're leading this flock, you're in charge.
Yeah.
But it also is a lot of accountability and a lot of responsibility they're expecting the congregation, the
To step up.
membership to step up too. It's time for you, instead of just coming and enjoying the stuff and letting somebody else do it, it's time for you to get involved and do it.
And I think that's where the leadership development comes in. It takes time to do that, but if you get that in place, then it actually frees up some time then.
But I tried to look to see where I saw it, because I don't see where I saw it, but I remember reading that they had the group of leaders who were already going through the training and stuff, and then there was supposed to be younger people, newer people, for them to lead.
Mhm.
Well, all we have right now are that first level. We don't have that second level.
Mhm.
And I think that's gonna be a real problem. And you can train us till the cows come home.
But are they implementing this on the pastors that are coming up?
Yeah.
You know,
That's
that
right.
they're
Hopefully.
they're in
Right.
schools, are they?
Implemented, yes.
And the thing that I'm thinking is,
Seminary.
that what I'm hearing is there are not
Enough,
enough
right.
new
Right.
coming up the
Right.
pipeline to fill the vacancies for those that are wanting to retire.
Right.
And, you know, if I were an older pastor and I'm reading this, I'm thinking, how long do I have before I retire?
And I get kind of like the teachers. Can I get out now?
It was the same way in dentistry.
Has it been?
Terry went through 4 years of dental school and knew everything about dentistry. I mean, he had all the mechanics down. And
Sure.
But there was not one class, one business class. Now, where do you think Terry was lacking? In the business sense.
Mhm.
He didn't know how to run a business. He didn't know how to hire and fire people. He didn't even know how to pay his taxes until somebody told him. Because he didn't have any training in that. All he had was, it's kind of like the minister. He has all the theology, all that kind of stuff. But do they ever give him a how to manage? Do they ever give him a management course or, you know?
Yeah.
And on top of all the other things, then you're supposed to be starting all these new programs and doing all this. I mean, it's just all the
But
things-
you're supposed to be equipping the people to do those things.
But this isn't something that is a year, 2 years, 3 years. This
Yeah.
is a long-term
Yeah,
project, and it may be that their idea is that we're gonna kind of lay the foundation and try to bring these younger people in who are gonna try to be the doers, because we're all gonna be worn out. or
well,
dead.
the other thing may be that we have to, somewhere in here it said,
No, I.
let's see, back on page 78, because it's talking about, we often find a pastor buried in the day-to-day operations, covered up with never-ending to-do list. You know, how can you find 3 to 5 hours a month to do a leadership class? Often competent leaders don't feel it is worth their time, effort, and talent to invest in a system that looks fairly broken.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a,
I highlighted
it's
that
kind
too.
of what you're saying, that negative.
Which is why I think they say later that this shouldn't be the first step. You
Right.
have to make sure that the system isn't broken before
Right.
you can start investing in the leadership and investing in the
Right.
the next
Once
step.
we get the other steps.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I highlighted that as well.
Yeah, I did.
Often competent leaders don't feel it is worth their time, effort, and talents to invest in a system that looks fairly broken.
Mhm.
And I think that's important to consider, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Somewhere throughout this whole process, and we're in it far enough now, and I felt this way at the beginning. And now that we're closer to the end, I have not seen this book address what has happened to the church over, say, just the last 50 years. Because I have a good frame of reference, you know, over these last 50 years. And how did we get from where we were to where we are now? Because if you don't understand that, I don't think you can reshape or redirect, you know, where we're going, if indeed it's broken. And how did it break? Like, and I know we group this in the tradition of the church, but when I got out of college, I first served on staff parish. I was the youngest one on the staff parish committee, so I sat and I listened and I learned. And then I became chairman. So I knew what was going on, and I was sure not going to try to do things differently because I had no experience to do it differently. I only had the experience of what I've seen done. And then the same thing happened through trustees. And so, well, I think that's where I don't want to talk about what I have tried to do to make trustees the last few years, when we get 3 new people on it. You know, I literally, not at one meeting, but through about the first 6 meetings, it would be an orientation to make sure that the new trustees understood the format for our financial reports, so they had a sense of what they were looking at. And I've got Andy Weir coming next, at the next trustees meeting, just to review the trustees' investments, you know, and I'm trying to make each meeting a little bit educational so that everybody feels like they understand what's going on.
It sounds like you're doing what they say you're supposed to do
Now,
in
see,
here.
I mean, that's really key, because I
Yeah.
would agree with you. Most of the time, you get on a committee, you don't even know what you're supposed to do.
Absolutely.
And then you're on this committee, I mean, we've
Mhm.
all probably been on nominating before. Have no idea what's happening. You walk in and you're handed the pictorial directory and they're like, okay, now we've got to fill these spots, you know? and these people will stay on, and these people are gone, and maybe we can talk these, you know, and you're sitting there and you're like, this is the way it is. I mean, you'd think people might have said, I'd like to do this, or I'd like to do that, but, you know, and,
I think the same thing happens in staff parish committee.
well, I think
My
so.
first time on staff parish committee, I had to look like a deer in the headlights.
Well,
I
I'm
had
on-
not a clue what was going on.
I'm on finance, and the last meeting, I just kept asking all these questions, and I felt like I was holding up everybody else, because I had no idea even where we were going, and that was my second meeting, you know? The first meeting was sort of like, you know, we're gonna do this and this, and not, okay, and it sounded good, and all right, everybody else was agreeing, I was a new kid on the block. And the second time, you know, I mean, it takes a lot to be able to read all those financials and to know where they're going, and if everybody else knows, it's just hard. Now, afterwards, people came up to me and said, I'm glad you asked those questions, because I needed,
And I try to go slow, and I try
Yeah.
to say, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions
Yeah, and
for
then
me?
I
And so
did.
it's fine.
But-
And that was fine. I'm glad you
I
did,
kept
because
thinking
that,
I'm
you know, that
promoting
helps
this
me
meeting,
too.
but,
It
you
helped
know,
me too,
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not, that wasn't your job to do that, but, I mean, a lot of times there's just not any kind of an orientation as to, you're new on
We
this
make
committee, here are
assumptions.
who the
Yeah.
other people are, you three people are gonna be
No.
new, here's what, and I think you're doing it right.
It's a true story, and I took Will Pullen's place. Pastor Phil asked me to fill in for Will when he was ill. And so I've been on the group for about 2 years now, maybe a little bit over. And I just couldn't believe all the things that you all discussed in the staff parish, if you've ever been on that committee.
Oh, that's a
I
brutal
know
one.
you-
It is brutal.
It's brutal. And
You know things that nobody wants to know.
It was Mary Jo, who, thank God, who took me under her wing and said, listen, this can be overwhelming. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to call me. And I did call her. And
Because
no-
I've been there.
Yes, because she had been there, but really, that was such a gracious offer. And this might be a very good thing for us to discuss about having orientations for the new people coming on, like you're doing with the members, and I
Yeah.
can't even imagine being on trustees. My
I
goodness.
think you're doing a
Wow.
re-education for the people that are already on, and
Oh, I
an
think that
orientation
too.
for the people that
Yes.
are. But it would, I would think, for most of these committees, behoove, you only usually have, what, 2 or 3 new people at a time, that if the chair and, you know, if the pastor was available, to be able to sit down and say, this is how this committee has been working, or, you know, I mean, and, or, actually, see, that's going back to the old way, you know, but to say, these are the tools that you need.
Yeah.
These are the skills that you need on this committee that will make you more comfortable and feel more like a contributing member of this committee. or
And I
something.
do know there's been some other chairs that have done that, have met with new people ahead of
You came
time,
in when
but.
there was a switch of chair. When Gary,
Yeah, well,
Larry
that's
went
always-
off, Gary came on, and so, yes, there was a switch of chair there that I know Gary probably would have normally have gotten, because when she's been chair before, he has gotten with the new people, as did Larry. He got the new people to come on and explain the budget and the balance sheet and things, but, yeah, you came on in a chair transition, and
Yeah.
but that's no
Well,
excuse, it's
Yeah,
And there's
just,
yeah,
that's
always,
still
what
happened,
well,
happened.
there's
yeah.
always an you know, I mean, there's always that.
Yeah, and
other
if
side.
I was reading this, maybe I was taking it wrong, but I got the impression that this was suggesting that we cut down on the number
Yeah.
of committees and combine some of them, so that when we have the trustees and that they, because one of the blessings that we've had on SBRC is one of our members is also on, isn't he a trustee? Dave Power?
Yes.
So that we
Yeah,
have a
there's supposed to
question,
be a
he can
representative.
communicate it with us. And I think that combining some of those wouldn't be a bad idea. The goal
Well,
was
the
the
way
same.
that I
The
read
goal was the
this,
same.
yeah, the way that I read this and what I took away from it was that they're saying that there ought to be basically,
A
do away
board.
with all those committees, and you've got like,
A
you know,
board.
your pastor as the head of the church, your CFO or COO, you know, that person is responsible for hiring and firing. Now they need to say to this other group what, you know, this person did these things, this is what's going on, I think they need to be replaced, and then there's a replacement. You know, I don't think they have absolute, but what they were saying is that it, what,
Just
8 to
short.
15 or something like that, people. And they said, in reality, probably, that's who's making all the decisions in your church already. There are probably 8 to 15 people that are very strong and very involved, just like you mentioned. Dave Powers, he's on 2 different committees. How many are you on? 2 or 3? Every chair is on ad council as well. But there was one main body, and there's somebody that's representing that's
They
looking
said-
out for the finances of the church.
They said it would be easier
Somebody-
to make changes.
It made
to
it
make
faster,
them quicker. if we did it
faster
that
to
way.
make the changes, and they were.
Well, but they also talked about that you don't want to go to that simplified structure without having that
The
accountability
accountability
piece
first.
in place.
Oh,
It's better to have the accountability first before
and
you
then-
get the simplified
Right,
structure,
because-
because then you get that uneven power dynamic.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, this study,
I
they
could
recommend the book Winning on Purpose. They mentioned that same book
They-
in
a couple
a
of
couple
times.
times.
yeah.
In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, when we're through with ADAPT, this may be one of those study groups that we put together, is looking at this book.
Yeah.
Well, and
Winning
there are
on
several
Purpose.
books that have been mentioned. I mean, it's
This
been a long time
one-
since I read Good to Great, so.
Well, and
you know.
the one that we talked about last week, the Charting a Course for Discipleship, that sounds like that would be a good study to offer the church. So it sounds like there's a couple things that kind of like, this struck me kind of like the last chapter was like, it put a lot of stuff out there, but really didn't give us the answers. We still need to work at the answers.
Yeah, and we need to
there's
figure out the answer that applies
that works for
to
us.
us.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
So
that
it's-
the one outline thing, back to, I think Mary Jo had said this, and where did I find it? That's,
Outline in
on page
8.1.
82, the very last point that they have there, and I don't know, he was going through how this whole thing would look. Here's one method that would transition you, blah, blah. It is, conclude the group in the spring with individual interviews with the pastor. The group experience, assessments, and interviews are then used by the pastor and nominations committee in selecting the new group of leaders for the upcoming year. It is possible that only half of your participants will become leaders. Some may realize that they aren't equipped to lead. Others may leave the church because they don't like the direction you're headed. And then it's important to mix existing leaders into the class to infuse new blood and new ideas to the present leadership regime. And so, I mean, you're bringing in these others, and then at the end it says, please bring those select few existing leaders along with the new people. And I don't know. I admit, in a situation with an influx of new people in a growing church, readily admit that he was in that kind of a situation. That's not where we are.
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I also admit that in the first couple of years, I didn't have new people. So, I mean, you can't bring in new people if you don't have them. And it took, this
Yeah.
guy is writing the book about it. In the first 2 years, he didn't have any new
Right.
people.
Well, and that's what he said, like Charles said there at the end, leadership development is not step one.
Yeah.
Right.
We got to do the other stuff
Yeah.
first.
Uh-huh.
But in the
But it's
process,
important.
But it's important.
but it's important. And as we're looking at it, taking time to figure out what that might look like.
But
To-
in the
to
interim,
me-
some of the things like Randy talked about, I think are a good,
Bridge.
Yes,
yes.
Yeah.
to
Start
people, 'cause
moving.
You do need to know that stuff if
Right.
you're gonna be on
Right.
those types of committees.
Yeah, and he said that there were 4 fundamental things: mission, vision, worship, and hospitality.
mm-hmm,
So I got the impression that's what we need to work on
right.
first.
When I met with Pastor Phil, I shared with him what I had heard from the group, kind of the focuses that we need to look at is getting a care team together to, make, like we've talked about connecting with our people. So, doing some calling, doing the freezer meals, sending the prayer cards. We've got a lot of little pieces of this together. But if the congregation can step up and take a little more responsibility from connecting with our members, that would relieve Pastor Phil from some of that. There are still people that, it only counts if the pastor calls on them, unfortunately.
And there are some needs that a pastor
Needs
be
to
there.
have,
Yeah.
obviously, yes. But this also might be an opportunity to educate the congregation, is that part of our ministry is to care for each other. And when, I think Wendy, you said this, to help people understand that if Charles calls on you from the church, he's calling on you on behalf of the church. The church, therefore the church cares about you.
Yeah.
So we need to do a little bit of education.
Yeah.
But, so that and the worship and the hospitality were the three things that I kind of shared with him, that this is what the group is feeling like we need to focus on. But,
These were all good points, and really good discussion, like you guys led yourself there, right, with this. I will ask one more question about chapter 7 before we move on to chapter 9. And I'm trying to decide which one. I just want to shift it a little bit so we can at least cover a little bit more. I guess the first question I think is the most relevant one. How does one go about becoming a leader in your congregation? How does one go about becoming a leader in your congregation?
somebody twists your arm.
I was gonna say, they're stepping up,
Right.
somebody just stepping up.
Somebody
anybody-
picked your picture out of the,
Okay.
out of the directory and put you on a
It's
committee.
the claw.
And in 2 years, you became the chair of the committee.
Chosen.
Well, now I have to say, that's not entirely true.
I know, I was being.
We're kidding.
Well, but it is, I
Part
mean,
of it
True
is
and not.
but part of it-
The
yeah.
kernel of truth.
But that's how you get on the committee.
That's-
That doesn't mean you're a leader.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
so
leader
that's
part
important.
comes, I think, over
That's an
time in
important distinction.
participating in those things and learning by the things that are being, again, that
Totally.
perpetuates the existing system, but at least
Yeah.
I think
Hopefully you
people.
weren't.
well, here's something that I think, and I don't know how we do this, but for example, at the downtown worship service, Mary Jo came up to me and said, there's people in our church that need freezer meals. We need to do freezer meals. I said,
I'll check.
oh, okay. Jeff and Kathy Davies were sitting there, and Jeff says, well, I like to go grocery shopping. Okay, I'll send you the thing. He went grocery shopping. And then it was like, how are we gonna pay for this?
Wendy,
So I called Wendy. Okay, so we have this great idea. Where are we gonna get the money from?
dinners.
So we came, the point being, we did this just because people said, this is something
wanna
that
do
needs
it.
to be done.
Yeah.
Do it, I know. In fact.
It would be good if we could create a structure that allows and encourages people to do that. Whether we have a line item in our budget that says new ministries. If we put some parameters around it and say, is there something you want to do?
Yeah.
In
Bring it
fact,
up for discussion.
Well, no,
Right.
don't bring it up for
Do it.
discussion.
Do it.
Get a
Be
group of
part
people
it.
together and do it.
And that's what this, I think, was talking about, is creating that system that
Right.
allows those permissions up front,
without
Right.
going through
so that you
the-
don't have to go through 15
the
committees to
property,
get approval.
building
And
request
this shifts
for,
into
Vetoes.
Yeah.
right.
Exactly.
Well,
This
not
shifts
necessarily.
into
You
chapter
gotta have some
9.
Guidelines, but I mean,
guidelines and
you don't
rules.
have to go through all the process that, then giving,
Janine,
then giving it permission for the
before we
office
go,
to
I
work.
need to pick up and.
Right.
Okay, so and so yes, that date is available. I
Uh-huh.
think it's okay. Do we have to go through trustees with every little, thing?
Right.
But I mean, yes, allowing things to work freely,
Flow.
but the important things,
you know,
We
it,
need that
it,
structure.
Working without it being drilled to death in
Right.
meetings all the time.
I think also
Yeah.
that what they were suggesting was like, okay, if you have an idea and you have like that, or you use your freezer meals as an example. There, if you have this idea of some outreach ministry that you would like to do, and you put a cap on it, you know, a financial, you know, so you can spend $100 or $200 on your idea, or $300. You can't exceed that amount, you know, and you know, maybe, you don't want to make it real difficult, but what's the protocol? You call Wendy, you say you have this great idea, Wendy says there's, you know, or there ought to be somebody that knows that this is happening on behalf of St. Matthew.
Right.
There should be somebody.
yes.
Yes.
And I guess
yeah, and
Yes.
that's,
And that goes
that's
into
where
your-
that accountability
Accountability.
structure comes in.
Technically,
Yes.
that goes back to the ministry again, so that somebody calls and says, Wendy, is there still money in that account? Yeah, I have this great idea, what if we did these freezer meals? And Wendy said, let me talk to Phil. Phil said, that sounds like a great idea. Wendy says, I've got $200 that we can give you, and you run with it.
But we
But
didn't
it-
need that. We didn't need Phil's permission to do a mission, I felt.
If this is saying that the person who is ultimately accountable is
Well,
the minister.
But the, and the, but the
Somebody needs to
the
know.
pastor is accountable then to the board. So that's where we really need to understand the
Yeah.
structure,
For
and the board is,
organizational structure.
But I don't
and the
think you
board
can
is
have-
accountable to the mission and vision statement.
Right.
Yeah.
So it kind of all goes back to that mission and
I don't
vision
think
statement.
anybody would complain or criticize about this. But I don't think you can have 100 people shooting off in every direction doing, oh, this will be a great idea, and I'll do it.
Yeah, we don't have
St.
an,
Matthew.
we
I'm
don't,
gonna do it.
yeah, we don't have an infinite budget for an
Yeah, we only know
infinite
what's
amount
going
of
on.
projects.
Well, or
And that's
saying,
fair.
Never know.
I'm doing this on behalf of St. Matthew. Maybe the overriding, I mean, it might be some offshoot thing, like some of the things that we talked about earlier with evangelism or something, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, they're saying that this isn't St. Matthew doing this.
Yeah.
You know, there
Right.
needs to be some
Right.
Right.
way that somebody says, yes, this fits in with our vision and our mission, and yes.
That's getting the right person to be that person that vetoes
Somebody has to be
or
the
approves it. We
connector
need
of all
a
these things.
role, a specific, what I'm hearing is a specific role
Yeah.
within the church that is in charge of, maybe not a committee, but we have someone who has the experience, I don't know if that's hiring someone or seeing who's in the community, right? Or who's already here that would be willing to step up, but someone who will say, well, who knows it well enough to say, well, we have the funds and we could scrounge some volunteers together. This could work, right? And allow it to flourish and grow.
Yeah.
Or that idea seems a little,
Little
yeah, it's
hairball
a little,
out there.
a little
It's a
bit
little
hypocritical here, a little bit.
Yeah.
You're
We may
speaking.
need to get some, we may have to get
heresy.
some permission on that one.
Yeah, we might want to go through the pastor here.
Well, and to be even more, if I understood this correctly, how this happened, you had an idea, you connected with somebody who ultimately, Janine, I hate to say this, you end up being the one that everybody comes to. I've got this great idea, how can you make it happen? And then she, you know, she's right now the person that's kind of fitting in that role, but, and then there were 2 other people that overheard that and said, I'd like to do this, and the next thing you know, so when you would have come with that idea, you already had your volunteers in place. You had an idea, you knew how you were gonna do it, you had somebody that was gonna do the shopping, you had obtained funding, you know.
But
People
even,
wanted
but
to do
even
it.
beyond that, I mean, just, it can be even simpler than that, that doesn't even require funding, is like, you know, I'd like to be in a Bible study. Well, get a group of people together and have a Bible study. You know, that's how I started the women's group. It's like, we need to get together and do some things. So just, and I guess, and maybe I felt okay to do that because I've been around the church long enough that I felt comfortable just doing that. But how do we get other people to feel comfortable enough to say,
I think it has also a lot to do with the passion a person has for a certain faith. like the Lucy retreats.
Yes.
For 15 years.
Yeah.
Or It's a Wonderful Life for Advent.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't do it last year. Thank goodness we're doing it this year. So it's a passionate thing.
Yeah, I
right?
think of Aunt Fran's feet washing
The
ministry.
foot ministry, yes.
We have an aunt. I have an Aunt Fran. She's no longer
No
with
longer
us,
here,
but
yes.
she. How many years did she
Oh.
run that ministry? She was.
Two
It was in
decades.
Virginia, West
Yes,
Virginia.
Virginia. Mhm.
Yeah, 20 plus years of this foot washing ministry, and she loved it. Like
Yes.
it was like, and the people that she met there, and the souls that she touched, right? Like that. Yeah, she had a passion for this particular thing. Right?
Well, and that's what this
but she
was
also had a
talking
passion
about.
for Christ.
Yeah.
So like that. So like it was that
Yeah.
was one of many things that
Yes.
she was
Yeah.
involved with. But yeah.
But that's what this was talking about, is helping people find their passion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Going from where we are now to finding that passion and then acting on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of we have just suffocated people with, you're serving the church because you're sitting on this committee
Right.
that
Suffocating.
who could care less about.
Yeah.
Instead of, where is your passion? Where would you like to serve?
I
You know,
liked-
Well, it's like we have two elderly men who, go around the church and see trees that need to be cleaned up and cleaned, and they just
Bless their
did it.
hearts.
They just
Right.
wanted to do it, and they did it. I don't know if they asked permission, and I kept telling one, please ask permission, don't be
Right.
just free willy in this, please.
And just
But
chop
yeah,
down
I
our
mean,
trees.
sometimes it just takes that to, okay, I want to do this, and
Yeah.
it's for the good. But yeah, I think that, when you ask that, how do you make, what was that question? How does one go becoming a leader? I think it's something that's in you. I think you have to have that.
Yeah. Skills and talents.
Or want.
Yeah.
I want to lead that. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
And there are those people, I want to be in a Bible study group, but don't ask me to lead it,
Mhm.
But I would love to be
Not the
there.
participant.
Yes, I want to be a part of
But
it.
you need those people as
Right,
well.
right.
And sometimes all we need is a little bit of encouragement.
Sure.
Sometimes the people that say, "Oh, well, I want to participate," right? Well, maybe that person needs that little extra nudge to say, "Well, we're looking for a leader, and if you really know if you've already read the book, if you just want to share it with everyone, maybe you'd be the right person." And sometimes I know there are times when I need someone else to tell me that what you did was a good job, or what you want to do, even though you're kind of passive.
Yes.
You need someone else to say it, right?
Well, and some of this may be from, as we've talked about, our past history. I think in the past, sometimes we have actually discouraged that in people because of the way people have responded to them stepping up. I think we've all shared stories where I tried to help and they went, "Pfft,"
Right.
and I don't want to help anymore. So,
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there have been several stories that were told about something, you had your feelings hurt. I heard this was the best quote, I thought. We kind of need to develop skins of Teflon rather than Velcro. And I thought, isn't that great? I mean, it's like, people are remembering, somebody said something to me 30 years ago and I still remember it.
yeah.
I mean, just let it slide off.
Rubber and glue,
Rubber and
right?
glue.
Yeah,
I made a note
Teflon and Velcro.
from page 99 that I think sort of gets, they
Yeah.
made the comment, most decision-making structures are designed to manage, not for speed of change.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we've kind of been talking about, is you gotta go through all the approvals and structures,
Yeah.
and how do you transition that, at least in appropriate cases, where people can make a decision to do some things without waiting,
I'm a
month,
Three.
2 months or 6
Three.
months to
Yeah.
get all the approvals.
On the bottom of 99, and well, on the top of the next page, leaders, the leaders that grew up in my generation, that age group, leaders would rather make no decision than make the wrong decision. Then on the top of the next page, millennials would rather make a wrong decision than no decision at all.
Yeah.
And I-
Go for it.
And learn from it, and
And-
do it again.
Yeah.
And they're exasperated with the amount of time that takes the
Takes-
rest of us to do
Oh.
it.
To get, yeah, to
To
get
get
something,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And then on the bottom, the last paragraph on 100, this kind of sums it all up. Despite hosting zillions of hours of meetings, we have encountered few churches in our consultations that actually hold people or ministries accountable for results. And I had to read that one a few times before I really understood. And I actually, when I read that, I wanted to call up Melissa and ask her within the course of a year if she could calculate how many meetings we have, approximately how long do they last, and let's get the statistics on that, right?
And what is the impact
What is the impact?
after those meetings? What have we actually done?
What have we done?
Well, trustees accomplishes a lot.
Trustees,
You're welcome to read all the minutes.
Nancy has minutes as well.
They are open and available for everyone, right?
Totally
But not-
transparent.
Yeah,
not parish.
yeah, transparent
Yeah,
policy.
Yeah, parish minutes.
no one can read those, lock and key.
That's the thing is they could, because they don't tell them.
Well, this is,
My second most despised word after evangelism is procrastination. I like to get it done and then let's talk about it afterwards.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
put off for tomorrow.
Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
Better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Well, it's just,
That was our work.
when you've operated by precedent and you do it and you do it and you do it, we're gonna do it because we've always done it that way, that's fine. And then, but
But
I've been
obviously,
I've been on too many committees, I've gotten frustrated because all we do is talk about stuff. And it stays on the agenda, it's like,
forever.
it takes less time to do it than we've spent talking about.
Mhm.
Just get it done.
Yeah.
because
That by-
what we don't have right now is that large loyalty-based volunteer organizations. We
Right.
don't have those anymore. If one of the younger people comes on a volunteer situation and leaves feeling like, one, they didn't accomplish anything, two, it wasn't mission, they don't come back.
Mhm.
There's no loyalty there for them to come back and get on another one.
Mhm.
And
Right,
they assume they're gonna have the same results in the next one.
yeah.
Well, and I think for the younger people, inviting them to sit on a committee is probably not a good thing, but finding ways that they can engage with others within the congregation.
More do than just sit
Yeah,
and talk.
and I was thinking, like when we did the Living Nativity last year, Josh and Keith and I think they drug Ronnie and a friend of his over and
I came by.
you
Yeah.
came and it's here's a task, get it done. It was great.
Yeah, and we got it done quick.
He's orchestrated all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And no
he's going to be called on again for the
Right, to gather people.
for the nativity, because it's.
Yeah.
But we need to find opportunities like that because we actually have young people that are on the periphery of this congregation that are just, I think, are waiting to be tapped, are waiting for their opportunity to serve, for someone to say, we need you.
Well,
We
and
just need to do better at that.
from different things that I've done with different organizations, the millennial mindset, they don't want to sit on a committee.
No.
They want a specific task, here's how long it's gonna take, this is when we're gonna do it, and then
Yeah.
it's done. It's kind of a one-hit wonder. And then I think the goal here would be, or the task would be for us to try to figure out how do you keep them engaged.
Yeah.
You know,
Continue
it's
to
great
do
if
those
Keith wants to
projects.
organize this, but
But that's
You
a
know, how
once a
do
year
we-
thing, how we, you know.
Yeah, do it once a year,
Yeah.
but we're happy to have him to do this
Yeah.
once a year. That's his contribution, and he may say, that's my contribution. I've got a job, I got a baby, I've got this and that, and that's enough. And that may, you know, you may have to be accepting of that, but, you know, we need to figure out how to, you know, make him more of a leader. You know, but the responsibility, the accountability is there. If he's putting that thing together and he is holding it together. I did want to say
Yeah.
one thing when you were saying the idea of getting on a committee and then being trained and moving into leadership and all that stuff. The first time that I was on staff parish, and this was years ago, there turned up to be a crisis. And it was not just one crisis, it was more than one. There were, you know, these things. And I was just on the committee, and then my principal and my superintendent, while I am teaching, showed up at my classroom door and asked me to step out in the hall where they asked me to take over the chairmanship of that committee. Now, they knew that there were going to be some things that were going to be falling apart, and it did. And it ended up, I had people telling me from all over, you need to do this, you need to do that, and I'm like a deer in the headlights, and I am calling because they said, you go call Mike Pointer right now at 9 o'clock at night. I'm calling Mike Pointer. And it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay, and we've got this under control, but, and at one point, all of a sudden, here comes somebody, and they said, this person is gonna be our new pastor. I made arrangements with the superintendent for a tour of the middle school. This kid he had a son that was gonna be a basketball star. Well, that never materialized either. I don't know whose hairball idea, where that thing came from, but all of a sudden I was told to do. And, you know, by the time that I got done with this ordeal, and it was a big ordeal, and I'm not gonna go into all the details of it, but it was an ordeal. And, you know, I did not ever want to, I did agree to step on again, but I'm telling you, you know, there are sometimes not trainings, it's whatever, live, warm body, and who do we think we can get that will be palatable, because they knew what they knew and I didn't, was somebody was gonna have to stand in front of the congregation multiple times and say, here's what's happening, and this and this and this, and, you know, so that was not a good way to run committees, for sure, or to select leaders. That just doesn't work.
Like, yeah, sometimes
anybody
we
else
just jump through
Look at
hoops.
this chart on 104. Did anybody else kind of understand this better than me?
I thought it was difficult.
I didn't get it.
104?
Uh-huh.
That's why I think we need to do this study, Winning on Purpose, because I didn't really get it either.
Yeah. I feel like they
I thought-
expected us to
The
know
the
what
numbers
winning on
there, and
purpose
what was
means.
that? I had no idea.
Well, my guess is this is the size of your congregation.
So we're a
Yes.
corporate?
Well, no, I think we're,
Used to be.
We used to be a.
yeah, I think we're more on the pastoral level now.
Yeah.
Wow, we have really dropped that, haven't we?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
So what does
that's,
that mean the pastoral's supposed to do?
well, I don't know. We have to read this book.
Okay, pass.
Yeah,
Well, I
didn't
think
get it.
my understanding of it is
It was-
within each of those brackets, right? 1 through 50, 50 through 150. So we're pastoral. Let's talk about that. They are, in order to move forward, we need to do one of those two things underneath it, right? Add accountability is kind of the cornerstone, and then as we grow, the next step is adding that strategic ministry planning, and
I
then
think you
as
have to
we
do the
grow.
Simplify first. You
Well,
have to
yes.
do-
Well,
Yeah.
simplify is simplify,
That applies
right?
to all of them.
Yeah.
That's underneath every single. That's the underlying thread throughout. No matter what size you are,
Yeah.
we're always trying to simplify the process,
But
right?
it says that we shouldn't move it to a simplified structure without also moving in the accountability.
Mhm.
yeah.
And that's why they're the first two down at the bottom there. As you grow, you increase, you add more into it. You add the strategic ministry planning, you add the governance, you add.
Okay.
But at the lower level, at the lower numbers, the first two goals are accountability and simplification.
So you don't add the governance portion of what we've been talking about until you get up to three
Yeah.
hundred and fifty plus.
Yeah, until you have a large ministry, a large congregation.
It-
Which means that maybe some of the committees, just throwing this idea out there, maybe it means when we say simplify, right, it means maybe some of these committees need to be dissected or dispersed or decentralized to some degree. Just,
Yeah.
just an idea,
Yeah.
right?
The thing that I underlined that was kind of frightening to me is that the leadership team is accountable to Christ.
Yeah.
Accountable to what?
To Christ.
Christ.
Yeah.
We hope so.
Highlighted that as well.
Mhm.
Because it's
And
not
then the
part of
pa-
our mission too, to make disciples of Jesus
Right.
Christ.
And that, yeah, that's kind of the whole thing, where
Yeah.
if everything focuses back on that mission and vision, then we're all going the same direction, and we all ought to get to the same place, theoretically.
Is there anybody in our conference that has implemented this or started implementing this?
Oh, yes.
Or where are they? Do you
There's a number
know?
of churches that are several years into this. We're actually pretty late jumping on this.
Well, yeah, because Bishop Coiner wrote the.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah, and as we said, I mean, when we get through this, we actually have a coach that will come on board and help us
and
through,
is that
through the process.
a minister or a?
It's, our coach is John Randall, who was he was here.
Oh, we already have a coach. That guy that
Yeah.
was here, that's
Yeah.
our coach.
That's our coach. John Randall is our coach.
And where is he? Is he in Lafayette? Is he a
Uh,
minister in a church?
No, he's a conference level person. This is what he does. He helps congregations.
This is
He,
his
he's a
job.
congregational
So
coach
he is paid a salary
Yes.
by the conference
to help
do-
congregations
Implement.
do this.
So we've already been assigned a,
Yes. Yeah,
Is he the same John Randall that was married to Sarah Randall?
yes,
Yes.
So he has some Clinton County connection.
yes, yeah.
And I think that's why, if I remember correctly, that was part of why, when we talked way longer, like that's,
2 years ago
that's
now.
like a deep core memory here because it feels like ages. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
he brought up that this was,
Yeah.
it was good to be back.
Yeah,
Or to like
I
be
didn't
with,
realize
with,
he had a
with the
connection.
congregation.
I didn't realize that there was
Yeah.
that connection.
yeah. Yeah, so, cool.
Huh.
Right. I like,
Huh.
just take a moment of silence, right?
Yeah.
That's good
Well,
to kind
well,
of simmer.
They're the ones that lost the children in the fire, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Louis Evans.
Three
Or Louis
children,
Evans.
two or three.
Yeah, Randall's had the fire and Louis Evans' daughter
Daughter.
was overnighting.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there were
Yeah,
several.
Real tragedy.
Oh, it was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And before we moved back here to Frankfurt, John Randall was also at our church in Logansport for a very short time.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
As an
That's the
associate.
first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they
Yes.
went to this church, didn't they? Weren't they at this church?
John was.
John and Sarah?
He was our
associate
youth
minister
pastor.
under
He was
John
our
Van
youth
Backe.
pastor.
He was the youth pastor,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
I think he
he
came
was
here
associate
with
while John Van Backe was.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was.
Our
yeah.
pastor.
Mhm.
And during that whole period of time, there were a lot of really horrible things that happened. Just that being one of them. I
Yeah.
mean, there were just tragedies. I mean, it was
Yep.
Oh,
On
a
page,
difficult time.
Yeah.
yeah.
on page 103, and this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. In other words, people are given permission to go about their job duties efficiently and effectively without having to ask permission.
Yes.
Authority is granted while holding the persons responsible and accountable. So that's, But,
Oh, and
yeah, I'm trying to find that.
on 102,
Balance.
in the first full paragraph there, they're talking about the simplified structure, and it said, placing 4 different organizational functions: trustees, finance, staff, parish, and church council into one team of 9 to 15 people. And that's where it goes on to say, you know, people would be concerned about, did you underline that too?
No,
I
I
did.
didn't, but
I
I
did.
did. I didn't underline that, but I'm glad you brought it out because I just thought, well, how long would that meeting be?
Yeah, well.
But isn't that sort of the admin council? Isn't that a
Isn't that what they're-
representative from those different groups?
Well, and-
Admin is bigger than 9 to 15 people.
Yeah,
But
but-
I mean, it's a similar concept, I
But,
think.
but part of the problem, I think, with ad council, and this to me is not what ad council used to be, but what ad council, how it is currently functioning is it's just reporting.
Yeah.
You come
Nobody's
and,
making decisions there.
yeah, all the
It's-
committees
yeah,
just come and,
it's
and
literally
report
just
what
a
they
report
did,
on
and
what-
it's
yeah.
like,
And typically, there's only about 4 people within there that are hearing that for the first time. Everybody else in the
Who-
committee has
already
already
heard
heard
it.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
so what, what this is saying is that, and I think this will be a tough thing
Yeah,
to
because
to
people
make
think
this
they're-
shift.
How do we redistribute our time?
Redistributing our time and redistributing that power structure, and that, this isn't gonna be an easy change, but I think
Yes.
it would be really,
I think
Streamline
it would
it.
be great because you have all that important things that
the business
the
stuff.
business that needs to be taken care of so that everybody can go do the mission of the church and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
enjoy it, have fun, and
Yeah,
not be bogged down in the
Meetings all the time.
in the meeting.
And
Yeah.
zillions of hours.
Yeah.
of meetings,
Yes.
yeah. So even though I can't quite wrap my head around it,
I know.
Right.
I think it's a good thing.
I agree.
I liked the
agree.
idea of the hats, right?
Yeah,
Like,
being
we
like
all
different
have our
hats.
Said I
own
put on
hats.
this hat when I take
Yeah.
off that hat.
Right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
the whole reason it's designed is to empower the laity to do hands-on ministry.
Yes.
Right.
And be involved in
Where is
more
that?
ministry
Right.
teams
Yes.
than committee work.
What page
Where
is that?
Page 102 in the middle, the bottom of the second
Have you been hoping?
Yes.
Right on the
praying,
middle, about
hoping?
right here, Elliot.
I'm
Oh,
hopeful.
okay.
All right,
Yeah.
that's good.
Is there anything you need of the pastoral office?
They're all gone.
Everything, according to this book.
Only at the top.
No, I'm not at the top. That is a misconception.
Oh, no, that's what they say.
Well, no, there's someone above him.
Yes.
Keep telling
I don't care
yourself
what
that.
the book says. I refer back to the wisdom when, and it was God-given, that Mrs. Ford asked me, who was Ford Theater in Ford Meter Box. Mrs. Ford looked at me one early in my appointment in Wabash and said, "And who's in charge at your church anyway?" And I looked at her and said, "Jesus is." At least that's what I'm working on. And so understand who's in charge.
Yes.
Jesus is, and that's what we're really working on. And that's where I'll head this Sunday. Now, don't say, "Well, you said it, and now I don't have to come Sunday." But if you hear the echoes of Scripture for this week, if we abide in God, we align ourselves to what God wants us to do in all of life. And that is a real rub, because it's not easy to hear what God really wants us to do, because that human side of us wants to look inward instead of looking outward. And the neatest part of this ADAPT is helping the whole church to realize real ministry is meeting people where they are, outward focus.
Yep.
With that,
Yes, thank you.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
the pastoral office will leave.
All right.
Alright.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
The page just fell off.
I am on duty for tomorrow and Saturday, although I've got 2 baptisms Saturday morning. I am going to make happy. I remember twice a year I have to be a good boy and make happy my better half. One is well, it's 3 times. Valentine's Day. 6 months opposite of that is our wedding anniversary, which is Saturday night. And of course, her birthday.
The big three.
The big
Big-
three.
big
All
three.
right. All right.
Have a nice evening.
All right, we'll see you
Bye.
later.
I'm so glad somebody else's, my pages keep falling out.
Yeah,
too.
this is the first page
I
that
mean,
I've found. That's
oh,
fallen out
I've
of
had a
mine,
bunch, I
so-
just keep sticking them back in
Oh,
there.
Yeah.
I haven't had that yet.
Nobody else's?
Oh, mine haven't either.
Yeah, this is the first
You must be
one.
really working it.
Yeah.
We're not working in enough.
No.
None of yours have come out?
Here's my question, and this I highlighted. I guess it's choose your own adventure, right? Teach. I'm have the facilitator hat on right now. Would you like the facilitator hat to come off and
Yes.
the teacher hat
Yeah.
to
Go for it.
come up? Okay. So two things. I guess the facilitator portion still kind of exists, but I'm going to throw this word out because I highlighted it, and I think it really truly does apply from what I've heard from the discussion and from what I know about the church. I just want you to think about this and maybe reflect on it this week. We have 30 minutes left, so like I know that I usually give a reflection for the week or for the 2 weeks. But the word that I highlighted, I've noticed it pop up multiple times throughout this book, is mentor. Right? I've heard mentor so many times and read mentor so many times, and I feel like it's come up in discussion a couple of times. But when I see the demographic of the church, right, that's an untapped resource. We have a lot of people that could easily be mentors for people my age, people younger. That's just what I see, and I'd like you to reflect on that in the upcoming 2 weeks. And I think of Randy, right, my confirmation mentor, right? Like I learned a lot, truly, from the relationship that I built through confirmation, but that's only confirmation, right? And luckily we've been able to stay in contact over the years, maybe not as much or as frequently, right, as I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be bringing this up on camera, right? But, you know, we've maintained a contact over the course well after confirmation. I don't know how that's worked with other confirmands and confirmantees, right? So just something to think about. I think that because there is a passion that I've noticed, especially in this group, and I think in the other group as well, I don't know as well, but I feel like that's something that we can think about when we talk about ministry and vision, and especially outwardly focused. We want to bring people in. Just an idea that I've been rolling around is this idea of mentorship. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and here's the lesson, right? I had the awesome opportunity through the church to go through the Bishop's Leadership Academy, which is for younger kids. I think I was a sophomore when I went through it the first time, and then I ended up going the second year, junior year. And the one thing that I truly remember, I remember a couple of things, but the one thing that I truly remember from that was this diagram. And this is going to be a very rough sketch of the United States or the world, but I'm going to use the United States as the example here. So they had this really cool graphic, and this is my very primitive United States, okay? This is my very primitive United States, but it's here. And and here's like Indiana, you know, like I'll just put this little dot up here.
I think
Let's
this is
just
after
let's
the
just say
earthquake in California.
right, yeah. And I'm just gonna say, and we
And
can
New
even,
England
like,
in too.
I think that's actually flip-flopped. I think it comes down to
Well, the Ohio River flows.
yes, the opposite. It flows out towards the Atlantic, right? Or, no,
Mississippi.
I didn't ace geography.
Welcome to
Geography
Mexico.
is not my
This is
strong
why he's
suit.
not an art teacher.
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
the point is.
The point is, we had this Venn
I was gonna
diagram.
say we got a Venn.
They had a Venn diagram, and over the course, and like we had several days of lessons and praying and speakers coming in and talking, and maybe I've simplified it in my brain to remember it, so maybe I'm not getting the exact sort of thing, right? They had a much more eloquent way of putting this. But essentially, you combine what you love and what you're passionate about with and love is that, you know, Christian idea of love, right? What you love, what you're passionate about, as well as it's okay to be very. See, I hate. This is why I think I've lost the eloquence, because I hate to say hate, right? But there are things that, you know, like
Dislike.
the things that you dislike, you know, like sin, right? Like things about sin that you wish didn't exist, like suffering and all this other stuff. So things,
Evangelism.
the things that we sin, so things that we love and we're passionate about, and things that we dislike, the sin in the world that we'd like to help ease, right, or get rid of, or alleviate suffering in some way, shape, or form, mixed, when the intersection of those two things align in a specific place, that's where you can do the most work as a leader. That's where your passions align, and where the things that you dislike about the world, kind of the evils of the world, right? When you can combine, where the intersection of those two things cross, and it takes reflection and a lot of mentorship and conferencing and talking with people about it, and then getting a group together to fight this thing, whether that be hunger, homelessness, drug addiction, right? I guess that's what I was trying, when I say sin, that's what I think of with sin, is this like addiction or homelessness, some sort of poverty, et cetera, et cetera. That's where you can do the most good, is where your passions and your dislikes or your opposition, I guess, would be. That's where you can truly do the best, the most good. And right, as Methodists, I think that was why they brought it up, because do all the good you can in all the ways you can, as long as ever you can, right? And the best way, and sometimes it's tough to identify those things, but it really gave a language to it, a very simple language, especially for high schoolers, that you can find something you're passionate about. So I think the example they gave, or I'm coming up with an example right now, was, let's say you love music and you play a lot of instruments. You can then divide, with the leadership that you have, be a part of a band, get a band together, praise band, worship band, whatever, host, you know, fellowship concerts, raising awareness for poverty in the area, right? Then you are using your passion to affect positive change where there is nothing positive per se, and then you have to find the location where that would impact the most people. So a particularly destitute part of town, or a low socioeconomic, you know, neighborhood, etc. Right? Like those, just as a general idea, right? So I think when we talk about leadership, this might be something to consider. Do we have this language of, and it doesn't have to be this language, this is one interpretation of how to go about things, right? But it hits on that idea of, we all have passions, we all have skills and talents that we have and are God-given. There are also things that we feel very strongly about, you know. There are families that, you know, long-standing history of like alcoholism or, you know, drug abuse is particularly, you know, a dangerous thing here in Clinton County, right? And we've known about this for years now, because we're in between Chicago and Indianapolis, and we're like the stop between, right? Isn't there any way that we could use a passion to overcome that problem in the community, because this is where we live and this is where we can do the most good? Just a thought experiment, just an idea. But I think it's important to think about these things as we move forward, because when we're talking about leadership, we need to have the right vocabulary and the right language around it, and the right mindset and framework as we're moving forward, which is why I really like this book, because we're getting that common understanding and that common vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
for them. Does that,
Okay, so
is
the
that
United
okay?
States
Does
didn't
that-
have to be drawn on there at all, though, really.
Well,
You're
I
just
mean,
saying wherever you are, wherever your
Wherever you
location
are,
is, the
right?
appropriate location.
but there are some people I know, thinking about people that I knew growing up, they wanted to get out of Frankfurt, right? Like I know so many people that think, man, I wish I were living in anywhere else, right? I would rather be
Until they're out someplace
elsewhere, right?
else.
And then they go out someplace
sometimes
else,
they-
right? And sometimes they move and stay, and sometimes they come back. But if there might be maybe what you are passionate about, you don't have the resources here in Frankfurt, Indiana, to do it, right? So then you would have to find the location where you would get the resources to accomplish whatever goal you have, right? So yeah, I wrote it because, and this is something that I think, especially as times are changing, flexibility is important. And we think about the global church, right? Or the congregation of believers worldwide. It doesn't necessarily matter if it's good in this location. If you don't have the skill set to battle drug addiction in Clinton County, but you have the ability to battle homelessness in California or in Indy or anywhere else, then maybe that would be the direction that God is calling you, and that was kind of the relieving part of the whole situation. The whole Bishop Student Leadership Academy was, it kind of gave that opportunity that as long as you're doing good and you're matching up some of these beliefs and matching up some of these things, you can do it. You have the resources, you have the ability to do it and to go where the most help is needed. So that's my teacher hat, right? Any questions? What questions do you have? I just did a professional development about rephrasing, the language in the classroom. What questions do you have?
Well, not a question, but an observation. For the first time, you made a positive statement of when you talked about our current demographics. You gave that in a positive light.
Yeah.
And we haven't been doing that much.
Yeah.
We're like, we're old, we're not good for anything anymore. Well, no,
Right.
We actually are.
5-10 years from now, where will we be? Right. Like that's what we were talking about right when we were at the beginning here, right?
But we do have gifts, and
Yeah.
and where can we best use them? And, yeah, and it's kind of like what we were. And I think it was maybe in the other group that we made a list of like some of those places that that we might be able to intersect who we are with where the community needs support, because and Pastor Lori's thing, one of the things she observed about our congregation is we're educated. We tend to be an educated congregation. Well, that would be a good group to then lead classes or lead discussions or lead, to use the talents and resources that we have.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And be more. But I appreciated hearing that in a positive light.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need someone to
Well,
say it,
say-
I
right?
remember when John Randall was talking to us, and was it at his church that they put the signs up on the number of people that had passed away, and they said if we continue at this rate, we're not going to have any.
Yeah.
We're losing 50 people a year,
Yeah.
and we're not taking in 50 members a year, and it's a year after year after year after year thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he didn't recommend that we do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of the reality when you have a graying congregation.
And another kind of shameless self-plug, not self-plug, but a plug for an organization in the community. Coach Kids is dying for volunteers, for mentors, for young people. So just as like an organization that maybe St. Matthew's can partner with, Coach Kids is truly like, they need mentors. They were asking teachers to be mentors. They gave us a flyer, and maybe I can bring that in to the next meeting, but they were saying, hey, we need mentors, we need them.
Melissa's
Um,
daughter
Huh?
Melissa's daughter volunteered to be a mentor for Coach Kids
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
of, in school.
Well, we talked about this right early on, though. We were talking about all the people that, if you go to work at the food bank, you go to some other thing, the blood bank, whatever it is. And the
There's a lot of
volunteers
St.
there are
Matthew
from
people.
our church.
Yeah.
There's a lot
But
of
they
people
are
from
not,
St. Matthew and Coach Kids as well.
that's right.
Yes.
And Coach Hitt, they're not doing it on behalf of St. Matthew. They're
No.
doing it out of the goodness of their heart. This is something that they feel really strongly about, and they're doing that. So I don't know how you do that. And, if you want, what goes back to that question, what if St. Matthew no longer existed? Would anybody know that we weren't here? They would if St. Matthew and all of its members just suddenly disappeared.
Right.
All of a sudden we're, taken up by aliens and
Right.
we're gone.
Right.
They-
The rapture.
Yeah, rapture. Left behind.
Oh,
Let's
okay.
let's hope we
Okay,
don't see
you wanna
members of
go
the
there.
congregation
All right.
afterwards, right?
Anyway, people would know if all of the people from this church
Yeah.
ceased doing what
Yeah.
they do.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that the nurturing that those volunteers get is coming from this church.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about Sunday is we've missed that connection of how we can share with people that I'm doing this because I am a child of God and I love you because God loves you and therefore I love you, and
And it's too in your face to say, oh, we're gonna get T-shirts and you all wear these T-shirts when you volunteer,
Right.
Yeah.
St. Matthew missionary or whatever, St.
Yeah,
Matthew.
most people don't want the publicity for doing those
No.
things, really.
And that's
They
right.
don't.
Much rather be
Yeah,
an
They
honor.
do it
Get out of their
because-
love. of their
That's right.
That's right.
yeah.
They don't want,
Yeah.
and donors too.
Oh, yeah.
I've had people that are like, do not put my name on that
Anonymous,
thing,
yeah.
and, I will
Right.
give you this much money, but I don't want my name to show up anyplace.
It's kind of getting back to the diagram that Charles made. It's like, we want to give money and direct it where our passion tells us we want to help. But just because I helped you, don't give my name to somebody else for a cause that I'm not passionate about.
Right.
Right.
Or the way that you expend your volunteer hours, Oh, they're a good volunteer, they'll really get it done, why don't you ask them? It's like,
Yeah.
it
But really
only
hit-
works
Because the good
in
volun-
fertile soil.
Right.
Yeah.
That helping,
Good
yeah,
volunteer
really
gets
helping
asked
people
all the
find their
time.
passions
The
is,
good donor gets asked all the time,
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, just an example of that, I went to band day with Bear, State Fair, with the band, and Becky Hutton went to Cindy Long, who used to be Cindy Schaefer, and said, I'm gonna need some help on this trip. I have 4 IEP students and I need some help. And Cindy's long comment was, ask Mary Jo, she'll go.
And did you?
Yeah, sure did. But I mean, people know who to ask.
Well, and you had a child involved,
Yes,
a
I
grandchild
did.
involved.
I did.
So that's what, she knew, you were passionate about it, you were passionate about helping your grandson,
And I would share
and you
that.
would be happy to be there,
But
and
we-
you would be a good volunteer. I'm sure.
We know who to ask, we know who
Yeah.
will say yes,
but by the same token, I've also heard in this, I think it was this, I don't know, one of the groups, that we rely too much on
Oh, I agree.
always asking the same people because we know they'll say yes, and it's easier than digging around through the pictorial directory or the list and saying,
Maybe this person would like
who
to.
else is in here?
Because,
Or
really-
who joined since the last pictorial directory,
Yeah,
you know?
well,
you
yeah,
have
we
to
can't even go by the
moved
pictorial
in.
directory anymore, we have to go by just the list, and,
Yeah.
And the thing it is, the old saying was, if you want anything done, ask a busy person.
yeah.
Because those are the ones who were always
Yeah.
saying
But-
yes.
But then
Yeah.
look at all the people we're
It-
leaving out that
that's
may
right.
find, that just need that little bit of encouragement.
Besides, but you can
To
also
say,
burn
oh.
out people,
Yes,
Yes,
you can.
yeah,
you know?
But you also, you go back to the book when they were talking about the, whatever, the 8 to 10 or 8 to 15 people that you were gonna, you know, this leadership team or whatever you're gonna call them, you know. You can sit here right now and think of about 5 to 10 people that if all of a sudden they were gone, there would be a huge hole within this church. I mean, this church would know that those people were gone,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
It's true with about any organization.
Uh-huh.
I used the Indianapolis Ski Club earlier. We have about 180 members and about 18 people who volunteer to run everything. So, you know, you get 10%, 10% can do it, but it's always the same 18. We're not rotating.
And that happened when we were doing the disciple classes. Terry and I took disciple 1, 2, 3, 4, and Christian believers. But every time we got together, it was the same people taking this. We didn't draw any new people into the disciple classes. We just took that first group and plugged through it. Where we should have been bringing in new people to that group.
Invitational, right? That
Yeah.
was one of the earlier.
Yeah.
Well, that was a major commitment. Those classes were major commitments.
Yeah.
And if anything changed in your life between when you took one and then to move to the next one, you know, because there was a lot of study with it and
Yes, it was.
Reading.
a
Intensity.
lot of reading.
But it was awesome.
All right, just to be cognizant of our time here, we have about 10 minutes left. Let's watch this video.
Probably be a good idea.
We also took the disciple Bible that was the short course.
Oh,
It only lasted 8 weeks.
Is it all
or
lowercase
something.
or is it
Oh, I
capital
didn't
T
have
and
that.
nothing
It
else?
It wasn't
The
anywhere.
force.
It's lowercase, just the force, yeah.
So you see the screen a little easier.
It
Maybe I
wasn't
shouldn't be
anywhere.
saying that on camera either. Okay, so we are on part
6.
6. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, then you're not in the,
I'm in the USB.
That's
This
two.
one? Oh, it's this one?
6 and
Oh,
7
oh,
next
it's
together.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Section 6.
Okay.
Chapter 7.
Greetings in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Jack Harden. Today you're going to expand your vision and horizon as we consider new ways to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world, which is the mission of our church and the mission of your church as well. Now we're going to focus on an important adaptive shift. It's a shift in our administrative structure. You probably realize that our current structure is not very effective or efficient. Sometimes it just takes too long to make decisions. Coupled with that, there are a lot of people that don't want to sign up for a 3-year job responsibility, particularly our younger generations. So you're going to be discussing a new way of doing our administrative tasks that have 3 major components. One is responsibility, authority, and accountability. We want to set people free to do their ministry, using their gifts and talents. But we just don't want to set them out there to do their ministry without proper supervision or correct job descriptions. So this is a way that your church can get more people involved in doing the work of the ministry. It's an important adaptive shift that needs to take place. Blessings to you as you consider now for your own congregation what that means. You've made it now to station 6, so you're making progress. In this session, we want to talk about moving from traditional to transformative. And I want to look at that in 2 particular ways. That is our structure and leadership development. So I'm going to suggest there are 2 things that we need to do more of, 2 things that we need to do less of. So let's begin with the left first. I think we need to have less meetings.
That's what.
I've
meetings.
served in United Methodist churches for over 50 years. I've never heard anybody say, Pastor, you know what's wrong with our church? You know why we're not moving forward? You know why we may be declining or certain areas aren't functioning like they should? we're not just having enough meetings. If we would have more meetings, we could solve all of our problems. Well, sometimes when I tell that lady, even laugh. Even pastors will smile. We all know that more meetings isn't really what we're going to church. But I will suggest there is a way to combine some committees that will enable us to have fewer meetings. What would it be like for your church if we put together the trustees, the finance, staff parish, nomination, put them all at the same table at the same time, and reduce the number of persons to 10 to 12 persons, and those 10 or 12 people will take care of all of the responsibilities of those 4 committees. Because we discovered that there's a lot of interaction already built into that. Let me give you an example. Your staff parish committee has to set salaries, but they do it in conjunction with the finance committee. So this is often the scenario. Finance committee meets and they say, this looks like our target, so we'll ask staff parish to submit their salaries. Staff parish, along with other groups, submit their budgets, and then finance may say, well, we've got to take cuts. We added everything up and it's just too much. We don't have that much money, or maybe even we can do better than we've been doing. And so it goes back again to staff parish. Or perhaps the trustees have a project that goes beyond the budget. So they have to meet with the finance committee to figure out how they're going to raise the needed funds. What would it be like if they were just all at the same table at the same time, having their conversations together? I think they could do it effectively and efficiently. The other thing that we need to have less of is committees. Yeah, you heard me correctly. We need to have less committees than we've had before. I think it would be interesting if you would take out your nominating report and count up the number of committees on your church. A church your size typically has 10 to 12 committees, or even more. And then I would like for you to count how many slots does it take to fill all those committees. Now, I'm not talking about just people. I'm talking about slots, because some people may serve multiple positions. So count the number of slots. For a church your size, it's not surprising if you've got 10 or 12 committees. You have 100 or 120 people serving on committees. And yet we have said that committees are not the way to get things done. So let's get rid of all the committees except for those 4 I named: finance, staff parish, trustees, and nominations. And let's begin to focus in a different way with those groups, because I tell you, and you know this, it's getting harder and harder in the traditional model to get people to serve for 3 years on a given committee. So you may be asking, well, if we have less committees, how will the work of the church get done? I'm so glad you asked that question. Here's the more. We need to have more team-based leadership. Let me explain what I mean by that. You're going to develop team leaders in certain areas of the program life of the church. So think about the program area of your church. I'm sure there's probably children's education, youth, maybe adults, missions, worship, whatever those groups are. You will have a team leader, and that team leader will lead team-based ministry. Let me give you an example. You may have a children's ministry. Their job is to coordinate all of the ministry for the children. But rather than have a committee that does all of it for 3 years, for example, you could develop a team leader for your children's ministry. They're responsible for all of the different activities of the children's ministry. It could be a staff person that's paid or unpaid, but they will help organize all those ministries. Think for a moment, you may be doing Vacation Bible School. What would it be like for that person to gather a team whose only responsibility is to plan, execute, and evaluate Vacation Bible School for your children? They know a starting point, they know an ending point, they know what their responsibility is. In other areas of children's ministry, we form other teams to accomplish those tasks in the same way. That same process can be applied to multiple committees or to multiple teams across the life of the church. So we're moving from committees to team-based ministry, where we're asking individuals to get involved, get their hands on ministry, rather than serving on committees. One thing that we continually hear is, while the nominations gets 100 or 120 people to serve, people doing the ministry often lack the leadership they need. So one of our major shifts in leadership development is not to train people to serve on committees, but to serve in hands-on ministry, using the gifts and graces that God has given them. That's something that we need to have more of. People using their gifts in ministry in the life of the church. The other area of more is in terms of accountability. Because we're going to give not only the people doing the work, that is the teams, we're going to give them responsibility and authority. They don't have to ask anybody else what they need to do. If they are operating within the parameters of the mission and vision of the church, if they're staying within the budget of their church, then they know best how to do their ministry. So they don't have to go to the old traditional model where they report to a church council or some other group to get permission to do what they do. We're going to set them free to do what they need to do in their ministry areas. But you may ask, will they do the right thing? That's where accountability comes in. The role of the pastor in this new shift is to make sure that all of those teams are working according to the mission, the values, and the vision of the local church. As long as they're within those parameters and they're staying within their budget, they can do that ministry. The pastor is held accountable by that group of trustees, finance, staff, parish nominations in moving the vision forward. So we now have accountability as a part of our structure, which we've never had. So you're going to explore more about this, you're going to learn more about this in this session. But I just pray that God will lead you as you think about how you can move from traditional forms of doing structure and leadership to a more transformative model that will help you make disciples of Jesus Christ and transform the world. Have a good evening.
All right. Kind of a useful recap there to kind of sum everything up, especially after the wide-ranging discussion we've had tonight. And it is 8:30, so I again want to be cognizant of your time. But yeah, I think I'm just going to leave you with that one word to think about, because I truly think we can tap into that here. I don't know what you all think, but think about that, right? Mentor. What does it mean? What does it look like? Is it something that's feasible, right? Are there any prayer requests?
Vicki Riggs is going to be having her cataract surgery. I believe Katie Knoll had back surgery yesterday maybe. Bert Miller is home.
Slow down.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm trying to envision the board. Kathy Cass is doing well. I mean, my sister will be starting her radiation treatment for her breast cancer in a week. Kathy. Trying to think who else is on.
Teresa Adams' sister's in Florida, and she has heart issues,
Oh.
and she has COVID.
Oh,
Her
no.
name is Annie.
Colleen McKenzie had shoulder
Oh, yes,
surgery
yes,
yesterday.
Colleen had her rotator cuff had surgery.
Yeah. And she says she's getting a little discomfort today, but getting along pretty
Good,
well.
good.
And I think that, I don't know, it's a nurse or therapist or something coming tomorrow.
Okay, good. Chris Leslie's dad is with hospice, and I think it's a matter of time, so keep Chris in your prayers. And she also has a nephew that's in the hospital with COVID, and he's not well.
younger, I mean.
He's like in his
real-
30s. He's has
Well, and
family.
her brother is struggling with it too.
Her
Ken-
brother is too.
Kenny,
Kenny.
he's
well,
lost
Really? I didn't
35 pounds, she said.
Oh, see, she's not shared that. So.
Yeah.
know. Is that from that congregation that had it?
Well,
The
I-
one congregation?
I think it's when it
yeah.
came into the store because I think Jerry had it as well, and then
Oh, so they think it came from the store?
yeah.
Mhm. Well, and I think we just need to kind of keep that the whole, what's happening again with the whole COVID thing. We're not done with it
Is
yet.
Leslie Manor still shut down?
One
Oh.
section is
The health center
care
is.
The
I
health
didn't know
center
they were
is.
shut down.
Yes,
When
they
did
have
that
a
happen?
case. They have a case.
Oh, they have a case.
And
Yeah.
also Mulberry Home,
Yeah,
Oh no.
just the
They're
nursing
shut
home.
down?
Baird's still out there.
Mulberry,
They're shut down?
yes,
You know Barbara Baird's still there?
I don't know.
I saw an email, must have been, this week or maybe this week, that somebody had talked to her and she was very upbeat and she was still at Mulberry,
Mulberry.
but going to be moving into the manor.
Oh, good. Okay. Okay.
When you say the healthcare center shut down, what does that mean?
You can't. People can't come in and
Lockdown.
out. You're
Okay,
locked
it's
down.
locked down.
Lockdown.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah, okay.
Individuals
Lockdown,
can't
not
come in.
shut
Right,
down.
it was all last winter.
Yes.
As of yesterday, there were 8 cases of COVID at Mulberry. Started out with a staff member, and then I learned part of the problem was 50% of the staff members who work there got their shots, the other 50% did not. It's a real problem if you work in a healthcare facility.
Yeah. Yeah,
It is, and yet if you're running a healthcare facility and you need workers, I mean, to say, we're gonna fire you, and then where are you gonna find replacements for those people, you
Same
know?
problem with
It's-
teachers.
It's awful.
It
It's
is.
awful before that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's been
Yes.
awful before that.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's a mess out there.
It's a mess.
There's not enough bodies for all the jobs right now.
It is awful.
And some of the
Where's Sherry today?
She's helping out her daughter and son over in Avon with something,
Okay,
yeah.
so we don't need
She's
to,
okay.
we don't need to put her on a prayer list. Probably
I
I'll
might add
remember Carol.
My sister-in-law Sandy, my wife's sister, she's got some pretty serious back problems and some nerve issues in from her hip to her knee. So she's in the process of consulting an orthopedic doctor, and who's already kind of indicated that surgery is absolutely the last resort. So anyway, she's kind of going through an assessment and monitoring. But in the meantime, she's like in pain all the time. So,
All right. Let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for this opportunity again to come together and have fruitful discussion for the direction of the church. I hope that the words here were well-intentioned and in your name. We have a list of woes, Lord, and we just ask for your hand of healing, hand of protection, hand of guidance on each and every one of them. And please be with everyone suffering with the sickness and nerve pains and surgeries, and there's so much, but you will provide. So please be with everyone that was mentioned today, and those that were not mentioned as well, that are in our hearts. Please be with each and every one of us as we overcome our individual obstacles, and allow us to lift each other up in these dark times, especially as we are approaching what seems to be another resurgence in this disease that's ravaging the nation. So please be with everyone and the leadership that making decisions, and the people that it affects. Just be with everyone. We need it. Thanks again, just truly for this evening, and I'm speechless with everything, with the way this ADAPT program is going. And please guide us and be with us as we reflect over the next couple of weeks and head towards the next discussion. Thank you and guide us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What do we do next?
Chapter 8.
Chapter 8.
And we do need a devotion and prayer leader for next session.
I can do the devotion.
All right, thank you.
You know what they say? It's a nice show. I may not be able to be here, or I might be here late, or I might have to leave early. I'm not sure. I have something happening that night, but
Okay.
I'll let Janine or somebody know.
So Charles, you want to take that thumb drive then?
Oh.
So you'll have that, yeah,
Take it out.
yeah,
Okay.
because that way
gonna just
you
put my
will
phone-
have that
Oh,
then
I
for
need it.
Sunday.
Put my thing,
You'll
I'll be
leave for
back in the
Sunday.
hallway, making sure we get closed,
I'll put it
locked
right
up.
here.
And then in the, down there, you just plug it into the back of the TV.
Okay, yeah, right into it.
Yeah,
Okay.
just, it goes right into the TV
Cool.
and, so it's easy.
Yeah,
You don't have to mess with all this.
yes.
Janine, is the kitchen unlocked?
Yes.
May I go get one of the meals?
Yes, you may. They're in the right freezer and just write down who you're taking them to. Oh, actually,
Yeah, the dynamics of.
I wanted to tell Albie and Dan we
Have a good
Charles,
week,
you're supposed
everyone.
to have
Oh, yeah,
this.
I'll take this as well. Thank you. And man, I'm gonna have to assign a note taker because I see you taking notes over there, and it's I need someone because I'm not good at
No,
note taking.
Ann Meyer has been doing the notes
Okay,
on Sunday
great,
morning.
great.
So
Should be
I will
able to-
contact her. We actually made a meal for Josh and Catherine. We made a family-size meal. Would you guys want to take it to her?
Sure. We will do that.
Where did they
Oh,
live?
forgot.
They live on
Oh,
Sycamore.
I forgot. I haven't turned this off. How do I do this?
Right here, they're
Do that.
Is he
And then
still at
slide
the-
to stop.
All these, they're on Fort,
So did I,
Keith.
is it?
Oh, that's Keith, I'm in the wrong
He's
family
still
now.
he's the manager at the
touchscreen.
Aldi's in Harlem.